Good afternoon, everyone. This will be my video lecture in legal aspects in the tourism and hospitality industry. Today is October 6, 2022. It's a Thursday afternoon, and we will proceed with our discussion on obligations and contracts. No? Last time, we have discussed thoroughly, I must say, the part or portion on obligations, no? And by way of a review, I told you also last time that there are three prestations, no? What are they again? There are three prestations in an obligation. What are they again? Well, the three prestations are the prestation to give something, prestation to do, and the third is the prestation not to do. So today, we will be discussing about contracts. No? If last time we talked about obligations, no? This time we talked about obligations, and in obligations, what did we say? There are two parties. We call that the debtor, who is otherwise known as the obligor. Still remember that? And of course the creditor, which is otherwise known as the obligee. And who has the positive right to demand the fulfillment of the obligation? Of course it is the creditor who has the right to demand. Who has the right to demand the fulfillment, no? The fulfillment of the obligation. Okay, so here, if it is the creditor who has the right to demand, no, the fulfillment of the obligation, he is considered as the active or passive subject. No? He is considered as the active subject, and it is the debtor now who is the passive subject. And by way of a review again, there are four essential requisites, no? Active subject, the passive subject, then the prestation or the object, and the efficient cause, okay, in obligations. But this will not be our topic. This is just a review, because we have to move on to another topic which we call contracts. Okay, so this will be our topic for today about contracts. No? Just like in obligations, there are also essential requisites of what we call contracts. This time there are only three. If in obligations we have four, this time we have three. No? The first is what we call consent. The second is what we call the object certain. And then the third is what we call the cause also. No? The cause, not the object certain. Okay, let us discuss this one by one. By the way, before I proceed with the discussion, of course, when we talk about obligations, we are just describing what the nature of, or what is there to do, no, the prestation. But if we are talking about how is this enforced, then we talk about contracts. Because when we talk about contracts, of course, we most likely mean written contracts, no? We most likely mean written contracts to formalize, no? To formalize what had been agreed upon. Clear? And I suppose that you have already seen some contracts in your lifetime, no? If you haven't seen any contract yet, well, you have to familiarize yourself. Find one, Google one, no? You find one on the internet so that you know the form as well as the substance of contracts, no? When I talk of the the form is the format, no? The substance, of course, will have something to do with, well, we call those stipulations, no? Stipulations. We call those stipulations, not the agreements. Or there are also clauses, no, that you could find there. Or, of course, in simple language, you could find the terms and conditions of the contract, no? So here, when we talk of contracts, please find one in order to familiarize, because I think that was one of your assignments, no? That you have to mention some of the types of contracts. So you have to find and familiarize yourself as to how it has been presented, no? The format. And of course, the substance is equally important also, because that is where you could find stipulations, clauses, and the terms and conditions. In short, we are referring to the contents of the contract. Clear so far? So you could find stipulations, you could find clauses, you could find the terms and conditions of the contract. Okay? Now, in a contract, no, of course, what we are talking about when it comes to contracts would be a written contract, because that one is enforceable in court. It provides us the evidence, no? Evidence whether or not there is a violation or no violation of the terms and conditions. Okay? So familiarize yourself with the form as well as the substance of contracts. Now, in a contract, okay, let us study this now. In a contract, just like in obligations, there are two parties, contracting parties, no, that we call contracting parties. The one who gives the offer is the offeror. No? The one who accepts, of course, will be the offeree. Okay? You familiarize yourself? The one who gives the offer, say for instance, I am offering you this, I am selling to you an automobile, for instance. Of course, you are the one making the offer. Now, if that offer has been accepted by the other party, then he is considered as the offeree. Okay, clear? But of course, in order to have a celebration or perfection of a contract, there should be acceptance, no, of the offer. There should be acceptance of the offer. Acceptance of the offer. Okay, clear so far? So remember these two contracting parties. So let us continue with the essential requisites, no, or elements of a contract. Okay, I will erase this now. So we talk about the essential elements or requisites of a contract. I discussed this earlier. Requisites of a contract. Now, of course, there are three. So I repeat, it will be, there is a consent given, no? Consent given, and then there is the object certain. Object certain. The object must be something that is there or determinable. And of course, the third would be the cause. No? So let us take this first. No? Consent. Consent being given. No? Now, the consent that we are talking about, the first element, no? It will be the first element in a so that there will be a contract that we could say would be consent. Now, who will give the consent? Here, no, the consent. Remember that there is an offer made by the offeror. No, there is an offer, and this offer has to be accepted. Clear? Who makes the offer? It's the offeror. Diba? And the one who accepts it would be the offeree. No? Do you visualize that now? So here, the offer is made by the offeror to the offeree. And of course, this offer has to be accepted. No? So this is where we are talking about the consent. And this consent has to come from the offeree. No? He has to accept the offer being given by the offeror. No? So how is acceptance done? No? The acceptance may be done either express or implied. No? Of course, if the offeree would accept the offer of the offeror, it could be expressly done, express or implied. No, he could do it also by showing that he is already accepting the offer in some other ways. Okay, so here, when the consent is given by the offeree to the offeror, it has to be, well, I told you earlier, it might be expressed or implied, and then it has to be intelligent. It has to be free from vices of consent. No? Vices of consent, meaning he understands what he is doing. No? And of course, it should be spontaneous. Spontaneous. Clear so far? It has to be intelligent, meaning the offeree knows what he is doing. It has to be free from vices of consent. This one we will be discussing some other time. And it has to be spontaneous. Okay? Clear? So that is the first element. We move on to the second element, which we call, what's the second element again? It should be the object certain. No? So the second element is, which is an essential element of a contract, would be object must be object certain. No? When we talk of object certain, of course it is there or capable of being determinable. No? So what is this object that we are talking about? Well, it may be a thing, it may be a right, or it may be a service. So these are the things that may be covered by the object. Remember that in obligations, what did we say? To deliver a thing, diba? To deliver a thing, that is one of the prestations. A thing or a right could also be delivered, right? Or to do something, which is a service. No? It is a service. So this is what we call the object certain. It could be a thing, it could be a right, it could be a service. Okay? The third element is what we call the cost of the contract. No? The third element would be the cost. The cost is of course what we call the why the contract was entered into, or the reason, no? The reason behind why the contract was entered into. No? Cost. When we talk of the cost of the contract, it is the why the contract was entered into in the first place, and also it simply means the reason why the contract was entered into. Well, of course, when we talk of this cost, volume cost, if we talk about the cost, what did we say again? There is an offer, and there should be what we call acceptance, correct? And this one, who will offer? It's the offeror, diba? Offeror. And the one who will accept would be the offeree. Now, what do you think is the reason of the offeror? If, say for instance, the contract that we are talking about is the contract of sale, for instance, contract of sale, what do you think is the reason or the cause why the offeror is offering that to the offeree? No? Of course, the reason of the offer is of course for the payment of money. Diba? Payment of money. Diba? The consideration. Now, in the case of the offeree, if he is buying, for instance, a car, the reason why he is accepting that is because of the ownership of the car. Clear so far? No, that this is just an example. Now, if, say for instance, the contract is about the contract of employment, for instance, no, and the offer is made by the offerer who is the employer, for instance, the employer, and the acceptance has to be made the offeree who is the employee. No? So what is the reason of the offeror? Well, to get the service of the worker. No? This is the reason. No? He wants the service of the worker, and the cost also of the offeree, the one who is accepting, is for the payment of salary. Did you get that now? No? So that is the what we call the cost. No? Now, but we have not yet defined what a contract is. Now that we have discussed the essential elements of a contract, I think this is giving you an idea what a contract is. So we need to define, no, what a contract is. So a contract is what? A contract is the meeting, no? The meeting of the minds, no? Is the meeting of the minds. Remember, meeting of the minds, whereby what? Meeting of the minds between two persons, no? Between two persons, no? Because there are two parties, no? Between two persons, whereby one binds himself, whereby one binds himself with respect to the other. With respect to the other for what? With respect to the other for what purpose? For what purpose? Well, to give something, again we go to for what purpose? The purpose is to give something, or to render some service. No? I repeat. No? So this is now the technical definition of a contract. A contract is the meeting of the minds, no, between two persons, whereby one binds himself with respect to the other for the purpose of giving something, or for the purpose of rendering some service. Okay, remember this definition, no? Meeting of the minds. Why is there a meeting of the minds? Well, because there is an offer, and then this offer will be accepted by the other party. Clear? And the two persons that we're talking about here will be the offeror and the offeree. Okay, clear? So we go now to the stages of contracts, no? Stages of contracts. When do we say that a contract is perfected? This is my first question. When do we say that a contract is perfected? No? When I say perfected, meaning this is the beginning of the existence of a contract, perfection of the contract. So when do you think? When can we say that a contract has been perfected? Well, of course, we talk about, again, the meeting of the minds, no? The meeting of the minds between the parties involved. Clear so far? So I think you will understand this better when we talk about the stages of a stages in the life of a contract, no? Okay, let us take that already so that you will understand how contracts are perfected, no? So we begin with a discussion of, again, the stages, no? The stages of contracts, no? Stages in the life of a contract, no? Stages in the life of a contract. No? The first stage is what we call generation. Okay, let me have this. So you take this down, generation. Generation, no? This is the initial stage, no? Generation. There are only three, by the way, life stages. Second is what we call, after generation, we call the perfection. Perfection of the contract, no? The third is what we call consummation. Consummation of the contract. Now, let us take this one by one. Generation of the contract is, of course, the initial stage wherein what happens in generation, the generation stage. Well, what happens here is this is where negotiation comes in, no? But is there an agreement between the parties? Negotiation stage. It's the initial stage. But if you ask me, is there already a contract in this stage? Well, you see, if they are just negotiating, they are just in the process of what? Forming the terms and conditions of the contract, the different stipulations. So, if you ask me if there is already a contract here, the answer is not yet. There is no contract yet. Clear? Because the parties are just negotiating. That is the negotiation stage. But the second one, perfection of the contract, will already be perfection. Diba? I discussed to you the second stage should be perfection stage. Here, there is already the celebration of the contract, no? Celebration of the contract. The contract exists already. Why does it exist? No? Perfection of the contract. Well, of course, the offer, as I told you earlier, the offer has been accepted. Accepted by who? By the offeree. No, so the offeree has already manifested or has given his acceptance. Clear? An offer has been made and this offer has been accepted by the offeree. Now, we go to the third stage in the life of a contract. Well, the third stage is what we call consummation. No? Consummation of the contract. Consummation stage. When we talk of consummation, of course, the purpose by which the contract was constituted, the purpose by which the contract was constituted, well, has been accomplished, has been done or accomplished. Meaning, the consummation in this stage, in the consummation stage, of course, after the acceptance of the offer that has been communicated with the offeror, no? Of course, there is already the cost, no? Accomplishment of the cost, meaning there has been payment on the part of the offeree, and there is already the delivery of the thing that is that has to be delivered to the offeree. Now, in short, the purpose has been done. Now, this purpose has already been accomplished. Now, I have to, before I end my lecture, I have to go back to the cost. No, the cost. the essential element as to the cost, because I have forgotten this. No, the cost again. What's the cost again of the contract, which is one of the essential elements? The cost is the reason. No, cost of the contract is the reason, or the why the contract was entered into in the first place. No, this cost is of three types. No, so what the first cost is onerous. The second cost is remuneratory, and the third is what we call gratuitous. No, gratuitous. Okay, let us discuss this one by one. Although you could, from the term alone, you could easily decipher what this is. When we talk of onerous as the cost, no, envision or visualize two parties. Diba? There are two parties, the offeror and the offeree. There are two parties. Now, in an onerous cost of the contract, what we are talking about is both of the parties will have to comply certain obligations. No, in the case of the offeror, the delivery of the thing, and in the case of the offeree, the payment. The payment of the thing. Now, in the case of remuneratory, only one will have to comply with an obligation, because he has to reimburse something. Say, for instance, in the case of contract of service, no, the contract of service, of course, after rendering a service, no, the one who received the service will have to give a remuneration to the other party. So that is remuneratory. No? And in the case of gratuitous meaning a thing or a service has been given for free. No? So these are the three types of costs of a contract. Okay? I think that is all for today. Now I will give you your assignment, which is assignment number 6. No, so your assignment number 6 will be this. Take this down. No? Are you ready? Okay. Number 1. What are the different vices of consent? Explain each one in your own words. No. What are the different vices of consent? Explain each one. Number 2. What are the so-called defective contracts? No, I will write it down instead. What are the so-called defective contracts? So this is assignment number 6. No, what are, number 1 is, what are the vices of consent? Vices of consent. This is number 1. So you explain each one. No, you explain each one. No, explain each one. No, and then second is what we call, what are defective contracts. No, what are defective contracts? Also, you have to mention the different types. Explain each one also. No? So the vices of consent and defective contracts will be your assignment. Now, when you do your assignment, of course, you have to do it in your own language, in your own words. No, I do not want you to be copying something from the internet or from the book, but I'd like you to remember that when you are doing it through your own language, the more that it will be retained. The idea will be retained in your memory. Okay? That is all for today. Good afternoon, everyone.